Hey everyone, my name is Caleb Janssens and I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my reviews of Doctor Who. Obviously today we're going to be talking about episode 3, The Wall, which I'm just going to say it. This is by far the best episode of Ncuti Gatwa Era so far. I have been loving this season of Doctor Who so far. There have obviously been ups and downs, but we are watching every single episode and reviewing it as soon as it comes out. So if you want to join me on that journey, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. But yes, guys, let's talk about episode 3 of season 2, The Wall. And I truly believe it started off very, very, very well. I just love it when the Doctor actually just spends time in the TARDIS. And at the beginning of every episode so far this season, we've kind of picked up on a pattern of the Doctor and Belinda in the console room. They land where they need to land. They quickly go get changed and then they run out the door. And I really, really enjoyed that. We're really starting to pick up on this pattern, the serialized pattern that really makes the whole show feel interconnected. And I really wish they actually did this last season with Ruby Sunday. Unfortunately, season 1 was so short and we really spent so little time with Ruby and the Doctor that it kind of just felt like a fever dream. And so I really hope that doesn't necessarily feel the case with this one. And there is that level of interconnectivity. And I really appreciate that. Another era I really liked in this opening sequence with the TARDIS console and the Doctor and Belinda talking was just their conversation about humanity and how the Doctor talks about how humanity is always out there, that they exist till the end of time. And it really reminded me a lot of the Great and Bountiful Human Empire, which we spent a lot of time with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, as well as the fact that we literally see humanity last until the end in Utopia with David Tennant. I really enjoyed that. And then obviously they just randomly played Toxic, which just threw me back to early 2005 Doctor Who. I loved that. That was a nice little callback that made me just feel like, hey, I like how Russell T Davies is leaving these little Easter eggs for us viewers who've been watching since 2005. Obviously, some of us have been watching from much earlier, but I like these subtle callbacks he's been putting in his episodes. But before we get into too many little dips and dabs about the rest of the episode, let's talk about the overall story. Well, obviously the Doctor and Belinda are trying to get back to Earth and they're having to do their scans every time they land. And ultimately what happened this time is they land by a mining colony. But all of the miners are dead except for one. Half of them have been shot and the other half have been assaulted. Just absolutely brutalized by blunt trauma. And we've got to figure out why that is, what's actually happened. And then obviously the Doctor and Belinda, they land with all of these Marines and immediately they're like, okay, well something's wrong. And they try to corner the Doctor and he pulls out psychic paper. I just love whenever psychic paper makes an appearance. It is one of my favorite tools in the Doctor's arsenal. And I just love how subtly he uses it in this episode. And it gave him this wealth of authority over everybody just because of the clever wordplay that he uses. So every time the psychic paper makes an appearance, I'm happy. And I just feel like we haven't been getting it as much as we used to. So I'm very happy we got it in this episode. And then what I really like about this episode straight off the bat is that the Doctor is put at ends with this Marine team. Because they're like saying, their call to action is hope is irrelevant. And in the previous episode, the Doctor gives a whole speech in the diner about how hope is essential and how hope is required for humanity to survive. And so just in one simple 3-worded sentence, hope is irrelevant, we already see that the Doctor and this team of Marines are going to be at ends. And it kind of puts us, a little bit on the back foot, like, oh, there's already conflict brewing. And it expertly puts in the tension, the seeds of tension throughout the rest of the episode. And so as we begin walking through this mining compound with the Doctor, Belinda, the Marines, the atmosphere is fantastic. This is the first episode in the Ncuti Gatwa series where I felt a little bit scared. There were so many brilliant horror elements in this episode. It was fantastic. And obviously there have been good episodes like Boom, but this episode genuinely had me on the edge of my seat. And as the mystery begins to unravel itself, as we're sitting there and we start to see these bodies, some of them shot, others of them crushed, and we are introduced to Alice and there's this mystery around her, it was just fantastic. This was, in my opinion, the closest we've come to proper, good, Doctor Who at its peak for a very long time. This genuinely made me so happy. I won't say like, oh, we're back, boys. I won't get that excited just yet, especially after the previous episode. But this was a very good episode, and if Doctor Who can carry on delivering this sort of quality, we're in for a good time. I'm busy talking about how much I really enjoyed this episode of Doctor Who, but I think a large part of that is also how Ncuti Gatwa portrays the Doctor in this episode. He is at his most doctored here. I mentioned earlier how short the previous season was. If I'm not mistaken, we're nearing the halfway point of season 2 already, which is crazy. But the previous Doctor Who seasons were 13 episodes. So a Doctor kind of had 13 episodes to make the Doctor his own per season. We haven't even had 13 adventures with Ncuti Gatwa yet. So we can kind of see how he's been finding his way throughout season 1 and through season 2, but this felt like his most authentic self. He was sassy, he was caring, he went through emotions like this, and it reminded me, I'll probably get, backlash from this, but it reminded me a lot of David Tennant, who could go from happy to rageful to sassy to happy. And Ncuti Gatwa did the exact same thing in this episode. When he's busy taking off the clothes, he gets really, really sassy. But then he's so caring, and then he can get upset, he can be emotional. I really appreciate how he portrayed the Doctor in this episode, especially when it came to Alice. He was so caring. This was a Doctor who genuinely, truly, truly cares about people. And this isn't like the previous Doctors didn't. But this Doctor just doesn't care about people surviving. He cares about their emotional, mental, and physical well-being as well. Again, not to say that previous Doctors didn't, but you can just see that extra layer of care and compassion underneath Ncuti Gatwa's performance. Then we get the first jump scare, and at first I didn't see what the scare was. The noise is what scared me more than anything else. I had to rewatch that scene multiple times to see what Belinda was seeing. And you know what, I'll say this, I think that was the right thing to do, to keep this character, out of the eyes of the viewer. And I think they actually should have leaned more heavily into that, and we'll break that down just now. But I think maybe we shouldn't have seen the monster at all. We should have gone, maybe they're the crazy ones. We don't need to see the monster, only they need to see the monster. And there's that scene, especially when Belinda's like, I didn't see anything. And then the other guy sees it, oh no, I didn't see anything. And so they're kind of mistrusting each other. How much more would we have, as the viewer, mistrusted what was going on screen if we didn't see the monster at all either? Especially with where the monster comes from, and we'll break that down. But I do feel like this should have been a case where we just don't see the monster at all. Because honestly, even when we did see the monster, the scariest part of the jump scare was always the music, not necessarily the monster. Another element I really enjoyed about this episode is how Earth is just gone and humanity is just gone. This episode did a great job of really also leaning into the fact that Earth has been destroyed, and the Doctor and Belinda are trying to figure out why. And I just thought that this episode did a great job of really setting up the fact that no, not just Earth is gone, Earth's entire impact on the universe is gone. And that's crazy, especially when we remember what the Doctor and Belinda were talking about at the beginning of the episode, about the great and bountiful human empire, and now they're just gone. So I really enjoyed how this episode, as much as it was a fantastic standalone episode, it is still continuing to build up the rest of the season. Now the way I fangirled so hard when we get the entire slow reveal of the planet originally being made out of diamonds. The moment that was mentioned, I was already freaking out. I was so ready. I was so excited. And then the moment we get the reveal that the planet's name actually was Midnight, I literally didn't have words. I remember just texting my mom and going like, you need to watch this latest episode of Doctor Who. Midnight is mine and my mom's favorite episode of Doctor Who. It is a clinic in great storytelling, in great character writing. And so to get a callback, and not even just a callback, but it's actually a direct sequel to that episode, made my heart so incredibly happy. This was such a brilliant way of continuing the story of a monster, but it does also open a can of worms that we'll talk about, but specifically in how the monster operates. What made Midnight so great was how the monster would possess people and take over them. And that didn't really happen in this episode. And we do kind of get an explanation as to why with Alice and the whispering, and it's because she's deaf. So cool. But I think this episode was worse off for trying to change how the monster from Midnight works. Obviously, we can also say, hey, it's been 400,000 years, its monster's changed, it's evolved. But the original idea behind Midnight was honestly perfect. And I really enjoyed this episode as a sequel. Again, I think this is the best episode within the Ncuti Gatwa era, but it just doesn't live up to the heights of Midnight. And I think the fact that the monster in this episode is so different is kind of a reason behind that. And I'm just going to continue the Midnight comparisons. The conclusion to this episode felt a little bit lackluster. It felt too easy. And I know that sounds rubbish to say. It sounds too easy when the solution was for someone to sacrifice themselves. It does also follow the same theme as the ending to Midnight, where someone has to sacrifice himself to destroy the monster. I understand that. But this episode, it just felt too easy for that to happen. They just tricked the monster into attaching to somebody else's back, then that person just jumps into a wall. What I was not expecting is the ending, the fact that the monster, and I don't know if it's the same monster or a monster that's very, very similar, made it onto the spaceship. I really hope we get a sequel to this episode. I really do. I think this monster can work in a very similar manner to The Silence, in the fact that it's a great idea, and you can play with the idea maybe in 1, 2, or 3 episodes. But then it's going to overstay its welcome. It's like the Weeping Angels. The Weeping Angels work brilliantly when you don't oversaturate them. Same with The Silence. And so I think we can maybe get one more episode out of the Midnight Monster, but then I want to retire it. I think then it's done. Because this version of Midnight Monster obviously has more rules that we can play with than kind of just taking over somebody's body. But I don't want it to become a constant thing. But the fact that it is now out there kind of makes us go, okay, cool, we can revisit this. And then we finally get the Mrs. Flood, cameo of this episode. I won't lie. Obviously, Mrs. Flood is supposed to be setting up intrigue. We're supposed to be going, oh, there she is. I wonder what she's up to. But at this point, I'm just getting annoyed. I don't care about this Mrs. Flood thing. If she's the overarching villain, I don't care. I'm kind of hoping she's like there's no way she is. If she was like a secret Time Lord, that would be interesting and she might regenerate into a bigger threat. But I don't take her seriously as a threat. I don't think she's scary. I don't think she's intimidating. I really don't care about Mrs. Flood. And I'm yet to actually speak to anyone who does care about Mrs. Flood. So we'll see how that goes. But the Mrs. Flood cameos are just getting annoying at this point. So in conclusion, look, all I've got to say is that this episode was phenomenal. This episode was the best Ncuti Gatwa has had in his era. It felt the closest to the Doctor Who that I fell in love with when I started watching the rebooted era. So I really hope we get more of this. I understand this, Neo New Who is supposed to be a different series to the one that Russell T Davies started in 2005. But this episode just reminded me why I fell in love with Doctor Who in the first place. This episode was amazing. So guys, please let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this episode. Please let me know if you enjoyed it or not. I'm so excited to talk about this episode. I thought it was amazing. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you guys again in another video.